Hey y'all, it is Mary Hyatt, and I am so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about self-sabotage. Now, let me just tell you that everyone has self-sabotaging behaviors. But why? Maybe it's because we're lazy and we lack discipline and willpower? Well, I'm going to argue that that is not the reason at all. This month, we are going to explore the unconscious reasons why we find ourselves in procrastination and destructive patterns. And here's a hint. There's a really good reason why you do what you do. Okay, let's jump into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey everyone, it is Mary, and this is our first episode in our new month's topic, all about self-sabotage, which I have been so deeply looking forward to talking about. I know last month we got deep into the concept of core wounds, and so this is kind of the perfect topic to be on the heels of last month, and really gets to show us kind of what happens when we don't deal with our core wounding. It shows up as self-sabotage. So this is kind of the first foundational episode. We're going to have plenty of time this month to get into this topic deeper with guest experts, with a dear friend of mine. But today I want to lay kind of the groundwork for understanding what it is, where it comes from, the signs that sort of are red flags that we're in a pattern and habit of self-sabotage, and give you some really powerful questions that you can ask yourself to see what is really motivating the behavior of self-sabotage. And it's interesting, as I was looking at different definitions of self-sabotage, I realized why so many people feel like they are an expert at self-sabotaging. This is so common for pretty much every single person on the planet. I guarantee you they've experienced at some point or another self-sabotaging behaviors. And so let me kind of get into the definition of it, and you'll go, oh, well, duh. Yeah, this is so common. But self-sabotage is your unconscious programming. Okay. So the motherboard inside of your head, unconscious programming that drives you to self-destructive behaviors. So it's your unconscious brain's way of making sure you meet the expectations of your internal belief system about who you are and about the world. So essentially, self-sabotage is where you come in and you display some kind of self-destructive behavior, because what you're doing is you are meeting the expectations, the belief system, the limiting belief system, the thoughts, the thinking of the unconscious brain. Jon Acuff, if you guys are familiar with him, great writer, great guy. He says self-sabotage is when you drill holes in your own ship because the trip is going so well that you feel uncomfortable because someone or something taught you that you don't deserve smooth sailing. I'm going to read that again because it's so powerful. Self-sabotage is when you drill holes in your own ship because the trip is going so well that you feel uncomfortable because someone or something taught you that you don't deserve smooth sailing. So self-sabotage happens essentially when you, let's say you want something. You're going to do something, you're going to make a change in your life, you want to experience some kind of life that is better than the life that you're living now. Okay, so that's what you're doing in your that's what you're doing in your conscious mind. You go, okay, this is what I want, these are my goals, these are my intentions, this is going to be my year. And then there's a gap between what you say consciously, but what the programming is, the unconscious programming is below the surface. So there's this gap. It's here's what I say that I want. Here's the intentions that I set, the goals that I set. But then your unconscious mind doesn't believe that it's possible, that it's safe, that it's okay to actually have or create those things. So the self-sabotage comes in because that's the behavior that's being motivated by your unconscious programming. And so oftentimes there's that saying that people have where don't listen to what somebody says they want in their life. Look at the results that they've created. We talked a little bit about this on the last episode with Jake Kaufman, that the results in your life really point to what that unconscious story is, the narrative that's sort of like below the surface. That's how you know really what is in charge. The unconscious mind is the program that's running the show. So the self-sabotage behavior comes in when that unconscious programming gets threatened, when something doesn't feel safe. So I want to kind of go back to a preliminary teaching that's going to lay some groundwork. And I've talked about this a lot on the show, but I want to revisit it so that we kind of have a context for where self-sabotage behavior fits into an overall bigger picture. So I want to go back to the acronym of BEAR, B-E-A-R. And if we look at what this stands for, the B stands for beliefs, the E stands for emotions, the A stands for actions, and the R stands for results. So this is a model that I use in my coaching practice all the time, and it's really powerful because what it demonstrates is that this linear process, if we go to the very end of the R, the results, so beliefs, emotions, actions, results, that R is only a byproduct first from our thinking, from our belief system. So how we think, what we believe about the world, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about what's possible, that is going to create and generate an emotion, a feeling inside of ourselves. And based on how we feel, it's going to drive us and initiate action or inaction. It's going to create a behavior, start a habit. And then that's going to lead us to a result. So you can look at everything in your life and draw it back to an initiating original belief. So when we look at self-sabotage, that falls into the A, into the action line of the BEAR acronym. That is not the thinking, that's not the emotion, that is the action. So for example, unconsciously, we have all of these thoughts. In fact, 95% of everything that we think is below the surface in our unconscious programming. So that means that even if I say I want to be successful, but my unconscious programming, that belief says, if you're successful, everyone will leave me. If I'm successful, everyone will leave me. And that generates the E, the emotion, for example, of fear or panic. Then that is going to lead me to the A, the action, to the self-sabotaging behavior that makes sure that I do something. Even though I say I want to be successful, I want to do the opposite of that. That's what self-sabotaging behavior is, usually the opposite of what we say we want. I'm going to do something that keeps me safe from people leaving me. So that's the internal drive. So the result is my business never becomes more successful and I stay safe, which ultimately, if 95% of me is in the fear of being left, if we go back to our core wound of abandonment, then self-sabotage is actually our unconscious's way of protecting us and keeping us safe. So it has a purpose. And oftentimes, we blame ourselves when we get in these patterns of self-sabotage and we think it's our fault. We think we're lazy. We think maybe we're just not a good person. We don't have what it takes to achieve this goal, or we just can't get it together. And we tend to self-blame when in reality, it is our brain's best way of keeping us safe and protecting us. It's actually an incredibly clever and brilliant way in which we are staying safe from our core wound, from our deepest fear. We're making sure that never happens. So as I start to uncover my own self-sabotaging behaviors, like when I find myself in a pattern of that, or a time where maybe it was unconscious and it becomes conscious. Like I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was doing this. I have a lot of appreciation for the part of me that is in that self-sabotaging behavior. I've really learned not to see that as a weakness or to judge myself or to criticize myself. I see it as like, wow, like those were the tools that I had unconsciously. Sometimes it's destructive. Sometimes it's not obviously productive, but at the most rudimentary, like deepest level, it's keeping me safe. And so I can appreciate that part of myself versus like blaming or shaming or judging myself for going to these self-sabotaging habits and behaviors. So if we go back to that BEAR acronym, I think it's really helpful to remember that we don't just sabotage in a vacuum. Like we don't just wake up in the morning and think to ourselves like, how am I going to self-sabotage my life today? You know, none of us are coming into a moment with someone or the world or our work or our body or relationships thinking how we can make it worse or more painful or more toxic or abusive. Like that's not the conscious conversation we're having. The unconscious is going, what in the world can I do to make sure that I don't get hurt again, to make sure that I stay safe, that people don't leave me? And it's really digging into that protection of experiencing that core wound. So as I've been doing my research and working with my clients, I tend to notice that there are 4 reasons why we self-sabotage. And the first, and I see this so often because the people that I work with are female entrepreneurs, female business owners, female execs. So they are working at creating more success financially in their businesses. All right, real quick, I had to share the exciting news that you can now text with me. And yes, it is really me. There's no team. There's no automation. Like I am actually on my phone texting you. And I love this because if you're like me, you're sick of all of the drama and the negativity on social media, or maybe your inbox is completely overwhelmed with emails and you don't even get to read my emails. Well, now we can chat over text. And what I love about this is that I'll be sending you little love notes and reminders to bring in some more ease and gentleness and light and grace and love into your life through weekly affirmations and encouragement. So what do you say? You want to be text friends? Let's do it. Here is my number, y'all. Grab a pen, or of course you can go to maryhyatt.com/text. But here's the number. It's 615-930-3522 and say hi. Let's connect. All right. Now back to this week's episode. The first reason why most people self-sabotage is because they have a fear of success. I'll talk about this more here in a little bit. The second reason why people tend to self-sabotage is because they have a fear of failure. It's like opposite sides of the coin. The third reason that people tend to self-sabotage is because they feel unworthy or undeserving of the thing that it is that they want. And then the last reason is that they have this sense of guilt or shame for having something good or having something better than others. So ultimately, when you really look at it honestly, every single person, every one of us has a really good reason for doing what we do. Even when it's sideways, even when it feels irrational, even when it literally is like the opposite of what's coming out of our mouth, there's a subconscious reason why we're doing what we do. It has nothing to do with your willpower. It has nothing to do with being good or bad. And it is our unconscious brain trying to protect us. And so when we don't feel safe psychologically, unconsciously, psychologically unsafe, then we ultimately will do whatever it takes. And I think that's pretty amazing. So for example, even if consciously, and maybe think about this for yourself, but even consciously, if you think like, no, but I really do, like, I want a bigger house. I want a more successful company. I want a bigger paycheck. I want something simple, like I want to organize my closet, have a more organized closet, or I want to have a healthy fit body or a really thriving, healthy, secure attachment relationship, for some reason, if that does not compute in your brain as safe in your nervous system, you're going to self-sabotage. So think about a common thing I deal with my clients. And sorry, there is a baby out in my co-working space if you hear it crying. She's feeling all her core wounds. But I deal with this a lot with my clients in their desire to want to lose weight or to feel more healthy or feel fit. And I often ask them, okay, so what would happen if you were to lose weight or to, heal yourself from some disease or something like that? And there's often, if not always, some kind of a threat that will pose. So like if you lose weight, you might have unconsciously that is a threat of being too sexy, or you fear that you'll be unfaithful to your partner if you lose weight, or that you'll become too powerful in your job. You'll isolate others, that people will slut shame you, or that people will judge you, or whatever it might be, right? So there's a lot of negatives sometimes to the things that we say that we want. Or for example, let's think about making more money. This is like a real common thing that people say that they want, that they end up self-sabotaging in a multitude of different ways. So let's say that subconsciously you begin to find out that if you were to make more money, it opens you up to a lot of vulnerability. So maybe you subconsciously believe that you'll be manipulated if you make more money, that you'd be taken advantage of, that you might be asked to give more, and maybe you're already feeling a sense of resentment or exhaustion from giving out. It could be that you have to work harder to make more money and you're already exhausted. So there's a subconscious belief that it's going to burn you out. It may be a subconscious belief that you could alienate your family, alienate your friends, or perhaps in some way like be unrelatable, that people will judge you, they will criticize you, they'll badmouth you. And so those are all really powerful reasons for making sure you stay in a comfort zone where there's no threat of your core wound, of being rejected, of being betrayed, or of being abandoned. So we stay comfortable. It's like, have you guys ever heard of the thermostat analogy? This is like one of my favorite analogies. I come back to this again and again because it's so powerful. If you haven't heard it, I'll explain it real quick. And this may be repeat for you, but I think it's good to kind of like take a moment and revisit it. So the idea here is that we all have a temperature that we're comfortable with. So like, let's say in your house, for example, and this is a metaphor, obviously. So think about how this relates to other things in your life. But everybody has a temperature that they love. Like, so for example, I like my house being at 71 degrees. I run hot. I like it being cold. And so like during the day, that's a good temperature for me. If it gets up to about 73, I feel it. Like I noticeably am like, ooh, like it is hot in here. And I will go over to the thermostat and I'll press it down a couple degrees. Or on the other flip side, if it's too low, like if it goes down to, let's say, 68 degrees, I'm like, oh my God, it is cold in here. And I might go put on a sweater or some slippers or go to the thermostat and put it up. And so oftentimes, psychologically, we also have an internal thermostat where we feel comfortable at a certain level. And this applies to your weight. This applies to the money you make. This applies to the quality of your relationships and literally anything else. So when we get out of that range of what feels comfortable, we self-sabotage to bring ourselves back to and into that normal range. So we almost regulate ourselves just like we would with a temperature. We regulate that temperature that we feel comfortable with. So let's say, think about how much you make annually. Let's say that you feel really comfortable making $75,000. Like maybe you've made that for a long time and that just feels really good. But if I were to say to you, how would you feel if you were to make $100,000 I mean, for most of us, we'd be like, oh my God, that'd be awesome. But if that felt safe, if that felt comfortable, you already would be making that amount. I remember I read this quote the other day that said, God doesn't care how many zeros you ask for. That is our own thing that we put on our own comfort level. Like, God doesn't care if you ask for 100,000 or $1 million. Like, it's no different to him, right? So this is self-imposed. Or if you look at it on the other side, if you go too low, like if I were to say, what if you lost money this year and you only made $50,000? Well, you would figure out how to hurry up and get back to 75K. You'd get really resourceful. You'd figure it out because that's where you feel comfortable. Same with your weight. This is really fascinating. So, and I have been all shapes and sizes. I've been, 240 pounds. I've been 160 pounds. I'm somewhere in the middle of that now. And like, there's a range that I feel really comfortable being at. But if I were to lose too much weight or gain too much weight, I'm uncomfortable. Even if, like, for example, like if it's what I should be doing, like losing some kind of weight, it still would make me feel uncomfortable because of that temperature gauge. Or think about being in debt. Think about how much debt is acceptable to you. So let's say that for you, you would never let yourself go beyond $15,000 in debt, but you max it out to $15,000. So it's not that you're in $6,000 in debt or $30,000 in debt. You're right there in what feels comfortable. Now, all of those numbers are informed by your subconscious beliefs, by what you think is safe, what you think is acceptable, what you think you're deserving of. And so wherever you find yourself in that, and you can look at your weight, you can look at your finances, you can look at debt, ask yourself, like, why does this number feel safe to me? Like, imagine for a moment going up to the next level. Notice, and this is a great exercise to do, like journaling, like notice how that feels in your body. Like when you start to think about making more, and I'm not talking about what you think consciously. We really want to get into the subconscious because that's where all the information is that's running the program, that's running our action. So we want to get down a few layers. So notice what happens in your body. What sensations spring up? Do you feel nausea? Do you feel tightness? Do you feel dread? Do you feel panic? Notice those emotions. Notice those fears. Notice those anxieties that begin to creep up. This is the conversation that you want to begin paying attention to as you start thinking about why you sabotage. Because sabotage can be subtle. And sometimes we miss the signals, we miss the signs, and we're like, how did I miss that? It's because, number one, it's in our unconscious. So we have to deliberately go in and bring new awareness into that and notice and kind of investigate and observe what is that conversation physiologically, in our sensations, somatically, in our bodies, and in our subconscious thoughts. So it's pretty amazing to see, like, when we look at self-sabotage, how subtle and clever it can be. And sometimes it's overt. Like, sometimes we hit our limit. And I've been here where we just blow up our lives. We just do, like midlife crisis, affairs. It could be self-harm. It could be erratic behavior. It could be addiction. Like, those are all super obvious ways that we self-sabotage. And those, I feel like, are at a moment where we're aware. Like, there's a point where we go, oh my God, like, I am in a huge pattern of this. But I want to help you get turned into, clued in on, rather, to the little subtleties of self-sabotage that creep up so that you can catch them before they turn into something where you're destroying your whole life. I mean, let's be honest. We don't need any more drama after the past year and change. So let's take a look at some of the signs of self-sabotage. And we're going to get into this a lot deeper and talk about it in nuanced ways as I bring in different guests and as the month progresses. So this is, again, is kind of the first entry into this. But A couple of signs of self-sabotage are like the number one is procrastination in whatever form or fashion that looks like. Anytime you are not moving towards the goal or the intention that you set and procrastinating in any way, that's going to be a form of self-sabotage. Any kind of overindulgence. So it's like, I want to be healthy, and then you run out and you have a binge, whether that's alcohol, whether that's food. You say, okay, I realize that like gluten really hurts my body. And then the next day you're eating gluten 3 times a meal, or for 3 meals and 3 times a day. It's like, those are forms of self-sabotage. Now, again, we have a really good reason for doing all these things, right? So zero judgment on that. It's like, we're human and our unconscious programming is running the show, but we can bring awareness to it. Other signs would be initiating conflict, self-criticism, comparison. Like, that's a really powerful one. Like, the minute that you start putting your eyes on other people and start looking at, okay, how do I not add up? She's doing this better than me. She's further along than me. It distracts us from us being in motion towards our goal, towards what it is that we say we want in our life. Like, that is a very, very clever way of self-sabotage. Imposter syndrome is a big one. Disorganization, negativity, lack of integrity to the self. Like, anytime we start canceling agreements, canceling commitments, that can be a form of self-sabotage. Isolating can be a form of self-sabotage. So there's a lot of clever ways that we will protect ourselves that can be pretty rational, honestly. And, if they're not like super outlandish and irrational, they can go undetected. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of what self-sabotage might sound like for yourself. So it could be like deciding not to drink for the next week, giving your body a break from alcohol. And then on day 2, you find yourself like on your 3rd drink of the night. Promising yourself to make a budget and get organized with your finances, and then going on a shopping spree. An example could be like deciding not to be with any unhealthy men again, and then downloading the latest dating app, or going out with somebody who's unavailable. It could look like getting your prescription filled and never taking the medication. It could look like living paycheck to paycheck and then splurging on a new pair of shoes. Self-sabotage could look like signing up for a self-development program or a course and then never showing up for it. I've definitely been guilty of that. It could be buying a ton of books on Amazon and never reading them. It could be talking about how next week you're going to make the change, and just that alone. You're always talking about, well, Monday I'll start this. Well, Monday I'll start this. There's always like a delayed action in the future that you never quite get to. It could be overcommitting and overscheduling without any time for yourself. It could be deciding to do like a new workout plan, for example, ordering all the equipment, getting the actual program, and then never picking up your weights, and they just kind of collect and gather dust in the corner. It could be getting your perfect job, your dream job, and then maxing out your sick days, canceling your meetings, kind of sabotaging in that way. Or it could look like deciding that you're never going to go back to an unhealthy relationship again, and then you find yourself texting him later that night. So these are just some examples. There are like literally, I could probably do that all day long and give you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples, because most of us do this all day, every day. So what we want to get good at finding inside of ourselves is where anytime our behavior goes against what we consciously say that we want and hijacks the agenda of our healthiest, wealthiest, and happiest self. All right. So any behavior that is in direct conflict to what it is that we say that we want. So we've got to get really good at being honest with ourselves and really seeking to find ways that we're out of alignment, out of integrity with ourselves and what we say we want, because that's where we want to go. Okay, there's some programming that is running the show that in my conscious mind, I don't want. Like, I think that was the big aha moment for me, is that there have been times in my life where I'm like, I'm so tired and sick of my old programming, my subconscious beliefs or whatever it is, like running the show. Like, I'm tired of saying I want something and sabotaging my efforts, of doing something for a little bit and then quitting, or coming in and destroying something that I've been building. Like, I don't want to be a person that is in that kind of drama long term. And so I want to get really good at finding out the ways that I'm doing this. So I want to share an exercise with you, because y'all know I like to get practical, and it's a helpful exercise to help you understand with compassion. And I want to like emphasize the compassion piece of this, to understand with compassion why you do the things that you do, why you're self-sabotaging. So when you do this exercise, I want to encourage you to be really gentle. See this with curiosity and not with judgment. So again, if we take away this need to like blame ourselves or shame ourselves that we're doing something wrong and that we just don't have willpower and just basically suck at life, like if we take that away and just say, I wonder why. We want to come at this exercise with that type of compassionate curiosity. So I want you to think about an area of your life where you find yourself in a self-sabotaging cycle, where that behavior or that habit is that you're aware of that in some area of your life, whether that is your wealth, whether that is your success, your health, your weight, your finances, money, relationships, some area that you're sabotaging. And so I want you to write out what that is. Like, I'm self-sabotaging in this area of my life, and I say I want this, but instead I do this. So let's identify what the pattern is. I say I do this, but I end up doing this. And then below that, I want you to write out 2 possible benefits that you'd get from this self-sabotaging behavior. This is unconscious, right? So you're bringing up something that's below the surface, up to the surface so you can see it, creating new self-awareness. And so what are 2 possible benefits that you get? Now, this is kind of like going to challenge your mind, because consciously you're like, well, that's self-destructive. There's nothing good that could come of that, or there's no benefit that can come from that. But the reality is there is. Again, your subconscious is keeping you safe from something. So what is the payoff? Like, how does it keep you safe? How does it get you out of responsibility? How does it let you off the hook for something? So it's like, what's the benefit of being broke? Subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously. What's the benefit of dating addicts? What is the benefit of overcommitting? What is the benefit of always being exhausted? What is the benefit of not being healthy? Now, I know that sounds crazy, but like, it is such a powerful exercise. And having the insight to remember that our subconscious always has a really good reason for doing what it does. Always. There's a part of you inside that is operating with a different agenda. A part of you inside that doesn't agree with what you say that you want. This better relationship, deeper love, more intimacy, more vulnerability, more money, more success, more health, wealth, whatever. It's like there's just like rebellion inside of you internally, and it has a really good reason why it's rebelling and saying like, I don't care what you say you want, we're going to do this instead. And it's like it hijacks your brain, and you go off and do things you go, oh my God, why did I do that? There's a really, really, really good reason. And so asking that question and listing out 2 possible benefits that you would get from the self-sabotaging behavior is going to be so illuminating to you, I think. So y'all, that is the end to our first episode all around self-sabotage. And like I said, we've got 3 more episodes this month, and it's going to be a powerful conversation. So if you love this episode, if you found it helpful, even as you start journaling about what you've learned, share with me your takeaways. Send me a message on Instagram, post about this episode on Instagram and tag me, Mary G. Hyatt. Share it on Facebook or with your girlfriends, because this is a cool and powerful conversation to start having. It's like the more that we can increase our own self-awareness it helps to increase the collective awareness, and we stop feeding as a society on self-sabotaging behaviors, on addictions, and just destructive type patterns. So I feel like a healthier you is a healthier us for sure. But until next week, remember that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Hey y'all, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.